Hi, my name is Ashley Larkins. This is my handler Stephanie, and our horse today is Chester. Today we're going to be talking about bandaging. Two important terms to talk about before we talk about anything else are protection and support. So our bandages are going to protect our horse. Protection is just a fancy word for if he were to hit himself either with his own feet or if he were to be jumping and hit it with a pole, anything like that. The bandages are going to protect him from any scratches or things like that. Now, support is going to mean that it actually supports the fetlock joint, which a bandage does not do. A support would have to be a cast. It would have to completely immobilize the tendons running down the leg, which a bandage does not do that. So when we're talking about bandaging, we're talking about protection, but not support. So there are a couple of different bandages that we can do. The first one I'm going to talk about here is a polo bandage, which I have here in my hand. A polo bandage is typically used for riding. So like I was talking about earlier, if the horse interferes with himself, it's going to protect him from that or any damage while you're riding him. Also, sometimes it's used just for kind of the fancy looks of it. Like in dressage, they like their white polos to look very pretty. So I'm going to wrap the polo bandage. Now when I'm wrapping a leg, I want to make sure that I am never sitting down or with both of my knees down on the ground. I want to make sure that I'm at least squatting or one knee on the ground so that I can get up and get away from the horse quickly. I'm going to have my handler stand on the same side of me so that she can help protect us. If he's going to kick us, she can pull his head towards us and the back end will go away from us. When I'm bandaging, I want to make sure that I start on a bone and not a tendon because we want to make sure that we're not messing up his tendons. If we bandage incorrectly, we can cause problems with the leg, such as cording. Cording basically means that we are cutting off the blood flow or restricting the blood flow to a certain area because we've wrapped unevenly or too tightly. This can cause a lot of issues depending on how long the bandage is left on, how tightly it's wrapped, or how severely it is, but it could end in ending the horse's career if it is bandaged incorrectly. So with my polo, I'm going to start on the inside of the cannon, and I'm going to wrap from inside to outside and front to back. So I'm going to let my horse know that I'm here. I'm going to squat down. And then I'm going to start my bandage on the inside of the cannon, starting on the bone and not the tendon. Oh, buddy. Put your foot down. And then I'm going to wrap around. And I'm going to try to get even wraps all the way down my leg. When I get to the bottom of my polo, I want to hit just the front of the fetlock joint around to just beneath the fetlock joint, or just below the ear gate right here. And then back around, and then I'm going to wrap, making sure that I wrap 50% over my previous wrap so that there's no danger in the wrap coming off. Oh, buddy. Oh. And while I'm wrapping, you can see I'm feeling around the back. I'm feeling around the back to make sure that there are no wrinkles in the wrap so that I know that there's no problem with the horse. And then I'm going to attach the Velcro. As you can see here, the wrap comes up to just below the horse's knee, and my wrap ends on the top here, which is ideal and what I want to happen. And it also ends with the Velcro on the outside, which is also ideal because this means that the horse can't interfere with it and rip this off. If I was concerned about this staying on, then I could use masking tape to just secure that a little bit. I'd also like to draw your attention to what I was talking about here earlier. My bandage is going to go to the front of the fetlock joint and to the back of the ear gate, so you can see this nice little slant. So it's just covering the fetlock joint. If you come around and look in the front here, you can see that because we've done that, we've gotten a nice little V shape right here, or an upside down V. And that's what we want. And we would like this to be in the middle or as close to the middle as possible. So that's how we wrap our polo bandage. Now that we have our polo bandage on, we want to check it for tightness and make sure that it's not either going to fall off of our horse or be so tight that we are going to cord our horse. So I'm going to just stick a finger in the top here, make sure I can get a finger in, stick a finger in the bottom so it's not too tight, and then I'm just going to kind of try to move it around and see if it slips. And as you can see, it's nice and it's on there well. So this is a good bandage and it's not going to fall off or it's not going to be too tight on the horse. The next bandage that we're going to talk about is our standing bandage. So what I have here in my hand is some padding. We just call this a pillow or a quilt wrap. This is a pillow wrap. A quilt wrap is going to have more of the lines in it and it's going to be basically quilted. And then right here I have my track bandage and this is going to be our top layer. We never want to wrap without at least an inch of padding underneath because this is just going to help prevent bad things from happening like cording and such like this. So for a standing bandage, the reason why we would use a standing bandage is if our horse is stocked up, we could use it to help with that. Or to use a poultice or a sweat, we could wrap this over it, or in a treatment of a wound, if we have a wound that we want to keep covered. So to wrap our bandage, we're going to use a lot of the same concepts as we did with the polo. We want to use even, nice pressure with even wraps down and back up. And it's going to go from just below the knee to just below the fetlock. And again, we're going to want to start on bone and not tendon. So I'm going to let the horse know I'm here again. Squat down. Now the key to a good bandage is to get the padding on well. So if I don't get the padding on well, my whole bandage isn't going to be very good. So I'm going to start on the inside of the cannon. Oh, buddy. And I'm going to wrap around, making sure that the inside laid nice and flat. Wrapping around so that it's on there nicely. Now I'm going to grab my track bandage, and with my track bandage I can go one of two ways. I can tuck the flap underneath here, or I can just wrap it, whichever way is more comfortable for me. So I'm going to take it around, and then I'm going to start wrapping down. I want to make sure that I'm checking for any wrinkles, anything that's going to be causing an issue. Wrapping with nice, even pressure. Making sure in the back, oh buddy, that there aren't any wrinkles in the back. And again, we have met with our Velcro on the top and on the outside, which is what we want here. So here you also notice that I've left a half of an inch of the pad showing at both the top and the bottom. That's because we never want the track bandage to be touching the leg at any point. So we want to leave that little bit of bandage on the bottom and the top to make sure that we're protecting his leg and avoiding as best possible the cording or any damage to the leg. Now, with this, I'm going to, again, check by putting my finger in the top, finger in the bottom, making sure it's not too tight. And then here, I can also, oh, buddy, I can also try to move it. I can also do a flick test, oh, buddy. And if I'm flicking the bandage, I should hear the same thud sound all the way up and down. That tells me that I used even pressure and the bandage is on well. The next wrap that we're going to talk about is the stack wrap. Now we're going to use a stack wrap in a couple of situations. The first one would be if a wound we had was above the knee. So say we have a wound right here, we could use a stack wrap in order to get a bandage up high enough that we could cover the wound and keep things out of it. The other reason we might use a stack wrap is if we have some unusual high swelling in the legs. We could also use a stack wrap for that. So with the stack wrap, we want to make sure that we have a long enough pad that we're going to be able to go from below the knee all the way down to the coronary band. Now we do this on the stack wrap as an anchor phase because if we had just a usual standing bandage, the bandage could easily slip down and cause problems like cording and uneven pressure for the horse's leg. So we want to use the horse's hoof and coronary band as an anchor so that the top bandage doesn't slip down. So I'm going to grab my padding and my track bandage. I'm going to let the horse know I'm here. Again, all the same concepts are applying from the other bandages that we've talked about. So I'm going to start below the knee and on the bone, not the tendons. And I'm going to want to make sure that this is a nice, oh buddy, oh. I'm going to want to make sure that the padding is going to go on nice here so that I can have a good bandage. Oh, buddy. Oh. Good, so here I'm ready for my track bandage, and I'm going to take my track bandage and start wrapping around. Also checking for wrinkles, uneven pressure. I want to make sure that I'm wrapping evenly. Gonna want to leave that 1/2 inch at the bottom of my padding again. Moving my hand around to the back side, checking for that pressure, checking for the wrinkles. Wrapping around. And as you can see, my wrap ended on the top again, which is good and ideal. I left my 1/2 inch again. The Velcro ended on the inside though, which is fine because we're actually going to end up wrapping over that anyways with the stack wrap. So now I'm going to grab my next pad and another track bandage. And what I've created here is a nice shelf that I can place my next bandage on. So I'm going to come in here with my second bandage, and I'm going to put it right above this ledge, wrapping around. And again, I want to make sure that I'm starting this on bone and not tendon, getting it on nicely so that I have a nice basis for my wrap. And then I'm going to grab my other track bandage. And I'm going to start wrapping, keeping even pressure, watching for those wrinkles. I'm going to come, oh buddy, I'm going to come down over my shelf that I created. And I'm going to wrap around that Velcro just so I don't have to worry about it coming off or anything. Then I'm going to start wrapping back up, checking for even pressure, trying to keep it wrinkle free. Alright, so here you can see that my bandage wasn't quite long enough, which is fine because we can come in with a third bandage to wrap up over this one. Another consideration to keep in mind is that here the leg's a little wider, so we want to make sure that our bandage actually gets enough Velcro hold that it's on there securely, which ours does. So I'm going to just grab my third track, and I'm just going to wrap up so we can get the extra side up here. Some people like to wrap these two separately and then wrap the middle section. That's also a fine way to do it. I just prefer to do it this way. So I'm going to take this third bandage and I'm going to wrap it just like I was wrapping this as a standing wrap. Starting on the bone, not tendon. Going to wrap around with even pressure. Come down and then head back up. With even pressure, watching for those wrinkles, feeling in the back to make sure there's nothing I'm missing. There's a little wrinkle I just found there when I felt on my back, so I'm going to pull that out. Ooh. And then making sure that there's enough Velcro that, again, this is nice and secure. And then here you can see, again, I left my 1/2 inch at the top of my wrap. So here I'm going to check for pressure, finger in the bottom. I can do our snapping or our flicking test again to make sure that there's even pressure. Just checking the wrap to make sure it's secure. Here on this bandage, I am going to use my masking tape because we are at a wide point in the leg and the Velcro doesn't overlap quite as much as it would on a regular standing bandage. So I'm just going to take a little bit of masking tape. Going to make sure to place it on the Velcro part so that, or on the closure part, because it's not going to do me any good if it's not on there. And then I'm just going to spiral down like that, just to give the bandage a little extra security so that I know that it's not going to come off anytime soon. So if we had a wound, whether it be down here or up here, if it was down here, we'd use a standing bandage. If it was up here, we could use a stack wrap, which we've demonstrated on this video. What I'm going to use is a Telfa pad or a non-stick pad. We're going to use the non-stick pad because obviously we don't want it to rip off the wound or whatever healing has happened when we take it off to rewrap it. So I have right here a Telfa in a container and a Telfa outside of the container so that you can see what it looks like. This one's kind of long. I could cut it in half and that would work fine. Or if it's a long wound, I could just use the whole thing. Now when I put my Telfa on, I'm going to need to secure it with something so that it's not falling down. So I'm going to use brown cling gauze, which I have right here. Just going to wrap a nice little layer around to hold that Telfa in place for the wound bandage. And then once I have the Telfa pad with whatever ointment I choose to place on it, on the wound, and the brown cling gauze in place, I can continue with either my standing bandage or my stack wrap. And once you have wrapped the wraps, if they're having a problem with a lot of debris getting in your wraps, you can use what we like to call elasticon. And as you can see, it is sticky on one side, and it is just a nice little bandage that you can place at the top or bottom of your bandage to seal it off from any debris. So I would just lay it on top of our bandage, and that would just seal down on his skin so that nothing could get in or up the bandage if you're struggling with that. In conclusion, we've talked about several wraps that we can do: a polo wrap, a standing bandage, and a stack wrap or a wound bandage. All these bandages are used to protect the leg, to help with stocking up, or to cover a wound, or in assistance with a poultice or a sweat. Remember once again that our bandages don't support any of the structures in the leg. You don't want to leave them on for more than 12 hours. You want to make sure and take them off so that we can check and make sure that there was no uneven pressure, there's no problems with the leg, and nothing negative is happening. This is especially important when you're using a sweat or a poultice because you want to make sure that there's no blistering or anything going on.